Hello, welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Podcast. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard. That's L-E-N-A-R-D. It looks French. It's not. It's Leonard without an O. Thank you for tuning in. As Graham Norton used to say on his show, let's get on with the show. I just wanted to let you know this brief intro. I'm going to double up 2 a week for the rest of January to get caught up on a few interviews I've recorded lately. They're kind of piling up. They're going a little too far in the future. I don't want to keep people waiting that long. So for the rest of January, I'll do 2 during the week rather than 1 midweek drop on Wednesday. So Tuesday and Thursday, the rest of January. Joining me today will be Lori Nicholls. And I had to take a closer look because I set my mug down, and before I welcome Lori on, I'm going to show off, honest warning, podcast trick, right? For the behind the scenes video, you will see my new mug. I pledge to God and country.
All right.
Nice and fresh water in there only, but yeah. CTP gear now available. tinyurl.com/CTP gear. So, pardon the blatant, willful, malice aforethought promotion.
No problem.
Welcome, Lori Nicholls. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. It's Laura with an A on the end, just so that everybody's.
Yep, see my mug.
I was going to say, it's where you.
The mug was laid down directly over where your name is, so I struggled to read it properly, and I did.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right, so say that again. You are
Laura Nicholls.
Laura Nicholls. Okay,
Yeah.
For us really old folk, we could think back to the old General Hospital days, right? Luke and Laura.
I know about that.
Oh, yeah.
I know all about that.
My sister and my mother used to be, R.I.P. Ma, my sister still with us, used to be big General Hospital fans, but nowadays she's into Days of Our Lives. I was like, oh my. But hey,
those are still on.
Yeah. Well,
good.
Days of Our Lives are actually moved over to Peacock streaming now. So it's not even on the regular general over the air that anybody could put up an antenna and grab to watch anymore. At any rate, we're already way off the rails here. Okay. Laura Nicholls, writer, former therapist, strategist, horsewoman, which caught my eye. We'll get into that. Domestic violence survivor. So I think we got a lot of ground to cover, and I try to keep my show short, but hey, as I joked before I hit record, we flow with the go here. We hit record and we go till we're done. So no definitive timetable has to be met or fed into. Is that a word? Fed? Did I close enough?
Well, I'm a writer, so I make up words all the time, so we can have that. Me too.
Yeah. In my the Book of Kennedy, Project Carpe Diem, I've used this term for decades, but I finally put it into one of my books, mass holes. The masses of asses out there, right? We all know them. Miserable people who only are happy if they make others miserable too, right?
They are out there, unfortunately.
So, again, I'm wasting time. That's right. Writer was first on the list. Let's get into that. Tell us.
Okay. How did I end up being a writer? Well, I was a therapist. I worked with kids in treatment for 14 years. And my very first clinical supervisor was a forensic psychologist, meaning she would do a lot of court stuff. And I always loved writing. When I was a kid, I'd write a lot of stories and sit at my grandma's typewriter. That I can still see the weird color.
Back to the typewriter days, yeah.
Oh yeah. And That I consider her a mentor. And this is way back like when 9/11 was happening. It was like my first year of doing therapy. So it's been a while. But she would just push my writing back and push my writing back because we were doing a lot of like court documenting. And she would say to me, envision your words on a court, like 10 feet high on a courtroom wall. So, there's one layer of that. The other layer is that those words are going to impact these kids' lives and their families. They go somewhere, and so it has to have the like highest level of integrity. And I'm so grateful for that experience. I went on in my career as a therapist to have writing be like a forte of mine, and I, audit other people's writing, and it just was an innate skill that somebody helped me turn into more of a hard skill, if you will. And then, flash forward several years later when I was not doing
So,
that work anymore.
and,
Go ahead.
editor, so you're a grammar Nazi?
No, not really. I mean, people ask me about AI, and I use it as a thought partner, and most of the time it's for grammar because I don't even remember all those rules. I know some things. I am a copywriter also, so I do a lot of marketing copy. You would think so, but I prefer to just let it flow, and then if I
Hey,
really need help cleaning it up, then I do, or if it's going to be a glaring mistake.
yeah. I'm writing
Um,
my fourth book in my Life and Living series. And
oh,
in the
nice.
acknowledgments and introduction, I've already reworked that a little to say, welcome to the 21st century. I love
Sure.
Shakespeare, Hemingway, Dickens, but these aren't those times. We're in the internet age, the age of social media and acronyms galore and
Yes.
grammar hacks, if we will, right? So
Yeah.
writing like Shakespeare is great if you're trying to tell a story like Shakespeare. Otherwise, it's really kind of silly because younger people, while they may have been forced to read it, and they're not really anymore, our education system is so bad, in English classes who get
Hmm.
it, and that should go back, their expectations of verbiage and how things are presented are far different than
Oh
before.
yeah.
So, welcome to the
Yes.
21st century.
Yeah, talk to text, right? As kind of taking that away. That's like my 9-year-old knows how to use talk to text, and that's
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah.
But it's also it's the climate we live in.
There's a big difference between speaking, how we vocalize things, and how you would write something normally. Like
Sure.
in my nonfiction books, I have taken a few of my shows, had them transcribed, and then when putting them in the book, though, I changed some of it because generally you
Sure.
don't want to you write differently to bring something across than how you may vocalize something. Yes?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, when I create book content for people, I interview them and I create the content from that. But you're exactly right. For them, the plus is that they get to just talk it through with somebody who can ask the questions and guide them down the path they want to go down. But you're right. When I then take that content and I'm turning it into the written word, it's a different animal for sure. But I was going to just touch on how I got into writing as a career. Flash forward, several years after I had been out of the mental health world. I had dabbled in entrepreneurialism, and then found myself with a 6-month-old baby and coming out of a women's shelter and starting from rock bottom. Just took inventory of my skill set, and I really was 40 when I had my child, so I was very committed, especially after the journey we'd been on to being with her. So that's how I decided to cultivate a business,
Yeah,
serving people with writing.
I'm hearing the domestic violence survivor part in there, and we'll get
Oh,
more into that later. We'll
sure.
touch on that later. Uh
It's hard to
strategy.
compartmentalize it.
Yes, I mean all these
Yeah.
interrelate. You already interrelated the writing and the therapist parts together.
Yeah.
Strategist.
Strategist is from having work. So, 8 years ago when I started my business, I like I mentioned, I had like dabbled in entrepreneurialism. That's a mouthful. And having this child, I was also living on a 40-acre horse ranch at the time, taking care of horses in exchange for rent. I was doing some other odd jobs just to kind of put it back together. I knew that I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to really go big with a business, but I knew enough to support other people. So while I started off as a freelance writer, I also got into, I called myself like an executive assistant and working with a lot of different kinds of businesses. And so in that process, I just got to, I work with amazing people. They all were people who had like started their businesses themselves and had done it all by, on their own from the ground up. And it was just a really great opportunity to learn the inner workings, especially in the online business world and the marketing side and all the other things. And so that's just a natural evolution of my journey, right? Is going from freelance writer to, okay, now I'm this serving as kind of this like right hand woman, if you will, to these business owners. And then carrying that forward into serving other business owners with what I knew, like I said, it's been 8 years put in, so I know some stuff. And so that's where the strategy piece came in, because with the writing, I do both. Most of my career has been mostly copywriting, and then books have kind of come in and out of that, and it's probably been the last year and a half that I really focused in more on books. They're two different writing muscles. They definitely support one another, but with the copywriting, it's rare that someone ever just needs words on the page. They need to know, like, how does this serve the bigger picture of their business? Like, what is it they're trying to accomplish? So that's where the strategy piece comes in. It's not, we're not just like sending words out to the ether. Like, they serve a purpose and they fall somewhere into the path of where you want your ideal person, whoever you're trying to serve, to do a thing. Ideally with the people I work with in an authentic, way with lots of integrity. And meaning. So yeah, that's where the strategy side comes in, being thoughtful and being intentional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And books are the same way. It's rare that I meet somebody that just like, they want to write a book and just let it sit on a shelf. They want it to like do something in their life. So there's strategy there. That's why I use that word strategist.
And why I wrote another blatant plug,
Oh,
how to write a book and get it published.
there you go. You know all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know all about that then.
Shameless plug, shameless plug.
Yeah, that's right.
And you already touched on, you mentioned Horsewoman, which is close to my heart.
Horses.
It really caught my eye in your profile because my sister rode horses for a while, show horses, blue ribbons and all that to show for it. So,
that's exciting.
That caught my eye. Yeah.
Sure.
Give us a little more on what got you into horses.
You betcha. Well, so I had been a therapist working with so the kids I worked with were pretty intense. They would go in and out of psychiatric settings into residential care. Like, they were pretty acute, you'd say. So I'd been doing that work for, I want to say 10 or 11 years. And the agency I worked for was like, hey, we're going to start just taking the kids to this horse program. And we want the therapist to go. And in my mind, I just thought, oh, cool. We're going to get to go play with horses, once a week. And we were at that first session, and these are hard kids, They're city kids. They've been through a lot. They are, as a therapist.
Horses are big. Some of them might be a bit standoffish at first. So that's a great get them out of a comfort zone kind of environment. And if you can get them to interact with the horses well, you can get them to interact with each other better. Yes.
Yeah, that's certainly a part of it. What I was to finish that thought was, we were probably about half an hour into that first session. I call these puzzle piece moments in time. It's when something just clicks for you and you're like, this is it. This is what I want to do. It was so, after having sat in an office with these kids, or, I'd walk with them, or I'd take them, it was a lot of like side by side, quote unquote, therapy, and not just like sitting on the couch. Having said that, though, seeing what was happening with these kids and these horses in just such a short amount of time was so profound for me. And it was just this moment of complete clarity that this is the work I want to do. So yeah, I just started hanging around people who do that and supporting them. And I mentioned, in my journey, I landed on a horse ranch with my baby and lived there for about 6 years. That's, a nonprofit program that also served kids. And so I still support that program. And now I moved to an area where there's a real need for that kind of work. There's not much for the kids here. So I'm in the process of I've also had on my heart since I was probably like 11 or 12 years old that I wanted to work with people and animals and horses. I saw this movie, another puzzle piece moment in time where I was like, that's the thing I want to do. So I'm 50 years old and I'm like, all right, it's time to do that thing. So I'm back in doing my trauma-informed equine certification work. It'll take me a couple years. So I'm a few months into that. And just working here locally with some people and done some volunteering with programs. So yeah, it's a fabric of my narrative, my story that I am committed to going in the direction of. I don't personally have my own horses right now. I don't have space to do the work. I'm really not worried about that. It's going to come about. I'm moving in that direction. So, but I do get to hang out with horses. I have like a few different places around and I take my daughter and she gets to ride. So horses are still very much a part of our life. Yeah. Not show world. We're a little different, but.
Yeah. I'm lucky. I'm in Wyandotte, Michigan, southern suburb of Detroit. But yeah, not far from me is still pretty open country area. Lots of horse farms or farms with horses, stables. If I'm ever feeling too city-ish, another made-up word, right?
Sure.
I can hop in the car and 20 minutes away, I'm out in nature and around horses and sheep and chickens and all that stuff. And it's very therapeutic. And unfortunately, a lot of city people who are in Detroit proper or whatever, or Atlanta or LA or whatever, to find that is quite a drive for them, and they need field trips to do that. They need to understand and experience that.
Yeah, there's something to be said about, your nervous system regulation, especially in the pace of a city. It's been a long time since I've been in LA, but I've been in all those cities you just mentioned. And there's the horses. We all have a field, an energetic field around ourselves and our heart. And we do know, like science, there's like anecdotal, like, oh, it just feels good to be around horses. But now science is telling us that we do regulate, we co-regulate with them. Our nervous system, our breathing, our heart rate, all the good things. So even as just on a physiological level, and I could probably talk to you for like 2 hours about why horses are good for you. I won't do that, but that is one that I really love because it's science-based and it's something tangible people can grab onto. Like, oh, that makes sense to me. Horses' brains also are naturally formed like a traumatized human brain, just because they're prey animals and the way that they function in nature. And so for people who have been through trauma, there is a lot of work that can happen between a horse and a person with helping the horse connect out of choice, not compliance, helping get them to think. And in doing that, it kind of takes it like one step out of the person, meaning like you're not sitting there like, help me, let's process your trauma, like tell me all about it. You're now connecting with this animal that is kind of wired in a similar way that your traumatized brain is. And by doing that connective work, it's so fun to see just how that washes over people, because it's really it's their work. It ends up being their work in a very safe, powerful way when you're communing with 1,000-pound animal in that way. It's really,
Well, maybe I'll have you back another time for just a Laura Nicholls horse whisperer episode.
Thanks. Yeah. Like I said, I could talk about it for a long time, but it's exciting. It's really a beautiful work. So, yeah.
Yeah. And people who've been cooped up in the cities, just it would be potentially difficult for them to get their brain wrapped around until they get to have such an experience. Like near me is Apple Charlie's apple cider, apple orchards, and during Thanksgiving and Halloween time, obviously they're very busy, but they too have a not necessarily petting zoo, but some of the animals can be petted, but there's a stable and a mini zoo area, so that indeed, that's probably 40 minutes out of Detroit, but that's still a reasonable field trip for a school to do. And I would love to see for me to pull up there and see school buses yeah,
Yeah.
parked and a
Yeah.
bunch of kids running around looking at the animals, knowing the good it does for my soul and
Hmm.
that it will do
Yeah.
for their soul too. Lastly, I mentioned at the top domestic violence survivor. Now,
Sure.
I'm not happy or, to talk about my being a suicide attempt survivor, but
Sure.
I feel it important to do that, right? I'm
Hmm.
sure I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I were a betting man, and I am, I usually only bet a dime at a time, unlike the Red Wings or the Lions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't win big betting a dime, but hey, I can't afford to lose big either. If I were a betting man, I would bet you probably feel the same about the domestic violence situation. It certainly doesn't bring up good memories, not happy to talk about, but something important to
Hmm.
talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate you framing it that way because you're exactly right.
I win my
Sometimes
bet.
I sometimes I get asked, because I help people understand their own narratives. It's what's that saying about the shoemaker's kids never have shoes. Like I do that. I've been doing that for other people for 8+ years now. Um, and Sometimes I get asked like, well, do I need to have a big traumatic story? And you don't. And I also get asked, how do I know what of my story to tell and what not to? And for me, what it comes down to is, sure, in full transparency, there is a quote unquote therapeutic piece in understanding your own narrative and being able to talk about it. But for me, I think it's healthy to acknowledge that, but also in the bigger sense, how does it serve who I'm telling it to? And that's kind of always what I come back to. I will also say that, it's for me, it's been 9+ years that I've been out of my situation. And I've talked about it very vaguely. I have written, in the nurture content, if you will, for other people's brands, even just as myself, how, I came out of a women's shelter, for example. That's a very broad thing that doesn't really fill in a lot of information. So, it's just really in the last like year, it's part of why I'm here is just wrapping my brain around I'm ready to talk about that in service to other people. I had some really profound experiences that having been a therapist and having been on the other side of the desk, it was a really interesting experience to realize, wow, now it's me on the other side of the desk, and the people doing that work. And it left me with a real mark on my heart in a good way that there's something that I need to do with that. That in service to others, right? That's for me, that's a real motivating factor. And
What my books are in this show too,
yeah,
trying to
exactly.
portray and provide and deliver my experiences, other experiences such as yours,
Hmm.
to others. Uh,
Yeah,
as you said, therapeutic for us to talk about those things, but
sure.
there are others who need to hear it, maybe going through
Hmm.
not the exact same thing, but something similar can benefit from it.
I'm a really big believer, getting back to the storytelling piece to kind of like meta view this a little bit, is that, in my experience, people are more, yes, the transformation and where you ended up and all the good things on this side are very inspiring and helpful to people. What they connect with more, what's more important to them is all the pain points along the way. And that's that story, right? Because they find whether, as you just said, whether that's their story exactly or not, they see themselves in that. They may have insights that you can provide that they haven't come to yet. They may find some hope that they haven't come to yet. Um, in my case, I'm not running around like, hey, I need to tell my story and talk about this thing. I layer it in as it's appropriate. I think what's come to the surface for me the most, though, is that my particular situation was what I'd call an unusual type of domestic violence, meaning that uh, no hands were put on me, but um, really frightening, like pulling a gun on me, threatening to take my child while I was still pregnant, raging, doing really dangerous things in the car while I was pregnant,
A
like where I
lot
thought
of
I was going to
mental
die.
abuse, and the
Yeah,
mental
it
abuse
is.
is as
Yeah.
scarring as the physical. Actually, the
Yeah.
mental scars remain. The
Mhm.
physical scars sometimes can heal and vanish, but
Yeah.
the mental scars are the almost harder to get over. And I like to say that too. You kind of alluded with my suicide attempt survivor
Hmm.
story. My story isn't someone else's, right? Everybody's
Sure.
story is different, but as you suggested, alluded, there are threads that people can connect
Hmm.
with and understand. Like I went
Absolutely.
from suicide attempt survivor when I'm on other shows telling my story to number one
Hmm.
bestseller. Well, even though I have how to write a book to try to help others tell whatever story is in them, that may not be in the cards for them. And that's not what's
Sure.
important. Little things, all lives matter, all life has value, all life has meaning. And little things you may not see when you're looking in your mirror in the morning thinking, has my life had any value or purpose? Little things
Hmm.
you've long forgotten, didn't think about, have mattered in other people's lives. And you won't have, like It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence come down to show you those things, right? Doesn't mean
Yeah.
they didn't happen.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. And when I say that, like, it's a kind of an unusual, in my case, like, it is and it isn't. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to between now and then who have, I think, I don't know if there's something happening in our society where that's becoming more prevalent or if we're just talking about it more. But it is
Well,
interesting, and
yeah.
I found more support from the quote unquote system than I thought I would, meaning that when I went into the sheriff's office, because when you're with somebody who's unstable and acting crazy, you become kind of unstable and a little crazy. And I just needed to hear someone say that's not okay, and yes, you can call the police.
Yeah.
And it was really like question like, well, nobody's actually hit me. I mean, pulling a gun on somebody's pretty scary, and saying they're going to shoot you and your child is pretty crazy. But
It's still
um,
an assault. It's still a threat
it
and an
is,
assault of kind under the law. And indeed,
yeah,
something else had popped in my head, but now I've forgotten what it was. But so, well, maybe it'll come back to
it'll
me.
come back. Yeah, it'll come back. Yeah, I guess my point was just that I feel like it needs to be talked about a little bit more and like normalize that it's not normal.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
it
And
came
where do
back
you
to
draw the
me.
line? Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
lose it.
Yes. Statistically speaking, maybe that number is about the same percentage
Mm,
wise of the amount of domestic abuse. But when you're talking just a few hundred years ago, the number of people on the planet versus 8 billion,
yeah.
quickly rising to 9 billion soon on the planet, the numbers, the percentage doesn't have to change for that number to get all that much more huge. Plus, social media, more self publishing, more people publishing books on it.
Mhm.
So, indeed, as you're saying, it is out there more because
Mhm.
there's more media available for those stories to get out. That's the thought that I lost.
Sure. I think that, yeah, and I think there's also in our, if we look at like the the narrative arc of social media and the internet, I think there's also some really cagey um, ways to terrorize people that didn't used to exist. And I wonder too if that kind of is like an underlying
Stalking,
contributor to the
bullying.
uptick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I still to this day, not today, but I mean, I'm still pursued in that way. I have court orders, I have stay away orders, but the internet it's a really yeah, it's an easy place to hide out and do weird things when you have too much time on your hands, I guess. I don't know.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, out of the 8 billion people, it seems there are far too many people with too much time on their
Yeah.
hands. And just the way
Yeah.
my OCD brain works now I'm going to have that stick song in my too much time on my hands.
I know. Well,
At any rate, thank you, Laura, not
yeah,
Lori,
that's all
Laura
right.
Nicholls, for your
Yeah.
time today. I
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it. Was an important discussion, I believe.
I appreciate that. I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
So the name of your podcast, how did you arrive at that?
Yeah, constitutionalist. Well,
Mhm.
pretty simply, I started thinking Ronald Reagan used to say, don't come to me with left or right, Democrat, Republican paradigm. Come to me with up or down. Does it lift up we the people or and tear down government controls or lift up government and tear down our freedoms? Dennis
Mm,
Prager also says there's a difference between a classical liberal who has things in common at times with conservatives and
mhm.
an ultra leftist ideologue. He likes to make that important distinction. So I thought to myself, well, are you a Christian or are you not? Are you a real
Mm,
Christian or a Matthew 23 Christian who just picks
mhm.
and chooses pieces of the
Sure.
Bible and warp it out of context? So I thought,
Yeah.
hey, there needs to be discussion on that, and then hence the term
Sure.
constitutionalist, because the Bible
Mm,
does deal in politics when
sure.
you look at it properly in its full context.
I feel like that's a whole nother conversation. Like I feel like we could have a whole talk about that. I'm a Christian and I went to seminary and I did all the things and I read the Bible every day. It's something I don't talk about a lot. But that theme of being what I consider lukewarm, right, which is what will be spit out of the Lord's
Yeah.
mouth on the day of
Uh-huh.
reckoning, is yeah, very prevalent. So I think that I don't want to get us off track in the last few minutes here, but yeah, I think that's an interesting. I appreciate your perspective in answering that question.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's a third rail to a lot of people. But also,
sure.
again, I try to avoid the Democrat, Republican, left, right paradigms. Are you
Hmm.
really a Christian or not?
Right.
How
Yeah.
steeped in your Bible are you really or not?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that scares a lot of people to not want to go down that road because
Sure.
they may realize they're in the or not
Hmm.
category. And that
Yeah.
scares, no one wants to ever admit they're wrong on things. And that's where
Sure.
biblical humility needs to come in, right? And the sin of hubris, it isn't pride. We should be proud of little Johnny hitting a walk-off home run at Little League. Proud
Hmm.
of Sally bringing home a blue ribbon riding the ponies that she has
Hmm.
at a local fair or whatever. That's different than prideful, which is hubris, which is the real
Hmm.
sin.
Sure.
Big difference there. And Jesus said, the poor will always be among you. That scares a lot of people to talk about. That wasn't a economics or governance statement. That was a human nature statement.
Sure.
People also take out of context. There will
Yeah.
always be some who do the bare minimum to try to coast by. And
Hmm.
especially if there are people constantly willing to bend over backwards to give them things they don't earn. It
Hmm.
doesn't say God helps those who help themselves, right? It
Yeah, that's
doesn't.
not actually in the Bible.
But it is kind of implied between the lines a little, as well
Sure.
as those who don't work don't eat. That is in there. That doesn't mean you starve someone who cannot work. There's a distinction between the
Sure.
unable to work and the
Hmm.
unwilling to work. But again, that is a whole other off the rails set of rabbit holes there.
I think we did pretty good, though, for fitting that into 2 minutes. So, well, Joseph, it's been so lovely to meet you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, I'm glad you came by. Now, the
Me
last
too.
usual close question. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
have a website for people
I
to reach out to
do.
you?
I sure do. It's really easy. It's lauranicholls.com. I try to keep things as simple as possible in my life. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, just myfullname.com, and yeah, that's my writing
And
and
Laura
book
is
coaching.
normal, Laura, nothing fancy
Yep.
about it there. And
Nope.
Nicholls is Nicholls.
Two
Same.
L's. Two L's. That's important. But your coffee
Okay.
mug got in the way again.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been
Yeah,
a problem. So I'm
that's all
glad
right.
I went there and we cleared that up. I'd have probably
Yeah.
put it in the notes wrong too then
Oh,
if
good.
we
I'm
didn't
glad.
get that
It is
corrected.
unusual to have two L's, so
Yeah,
anyway, I made
I
that
was
part
going to
complicated.
joke spelled the same as Michelle
Hmm.
Nichols from Star Trek, but
Oh,
no,
funny.
it's not.
Nope, not quite.
Curveball. Anyway, thank you, Laura Nichols with 2 L's for coming on.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Joseph.
Announcing Constitutionalist Podcast Gear, CTP Gear, or CTP Wear, if you prefer. Headgear, like hats. Torso gear, apparel. Drink gear, mugs and glasses, and the sort. So, subscribe to CTP at tinyurl.com/subscribe to CTP. Get your CTP gear via tinyurl.com/CTP gear. And of course, get your Joseph M. Leonard Media manuscripts via josephmleonard.us/shop. And again, that's Leonard without an O. josephmleonard.us/shop. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help. Thank you for having tuned into another Constitutionalist podcast show. I really appreciate that you stopped by. Again, please like, share, subscribe. We need you to help spread the Constitutionalist movement. Thank you again. Take care. God bless. Love you all.